All right, off to a flying start. Apparently people can hear me now. Sorry for the glitches. This is the first time we've put on a webinar, and so you're gonna have to live through the pain with me and everybody else. So my name is Bill Wingle. I'm out of Region 3. I've been a NATRC member for about the last 13 years, and I've been using GPSs for about 15 years. And in Region 3, I was kind of one of the first people to say, let's start using GPSs on the trail and using them to make maps. And ever since then, I've been kind of the person to go to figure out how to use a GPS, how to use it on the trail, begin to a few talks, and I load tracks for people and that kind of thing. So that's basically who I am. What am I gonna talk to you about today? I'm gonna kind of hit two different topics. This summer, we're starting up with a new program where because of the coronavirus, we just decided to start doing something new. And we might actually start doing this long-term, but this year is kind of the test period. And so we've started a new program called the NATRC Coronavirus Response Mileage Challenge. This is going to be pretty simple. You are going to have to use a GPS, and I'll go over the basics, and they're really very basic. Once we get past that, I will start to go into kind of a more normal talk that I would give about using a GPS at a CTR. And there I'll talk about why you want to use a GPS. Basically, the idea is that they're very useful for helping you stay on the trail, preventing you from getting lost, telling you how far down the trail you've been so you can kind of figure out your pacing, determine how long you've been riding, how fast you're going, double as a stopwatch, and then worst case comes along and you don't know where you are, you can help figure out where you're at. What I'm not going to go into any detail today is about how to use specific GPSs. I am starting to put together some videos online to do this. It looks like my video feed is locked up. I'm going to stop and restart that real quickly. This was working fine for the last couple of days. I'm using a smartphone for my web camera. Looks like I kill off that camera. There's not going to be any video feed for my face, so I think you can probably all live with that. Let's see, getting back. So what I'm not going to get over is how to use a specific GPS. I have been starting to make some YouTube videos, and I am posting them on my website. For example, this is what my website looks like. It's nearbytrails.com, and you go to WordPress, and then I've created several videos for the basic operation of a Garmin eTrex. This is a little handheld GPS, how to set up pages on it, how to customize the trip computer, how to time out at the start of an NATRC ride, how to load GPS tracks onto that GPS. I'm going to be doing that for some smartphone apps as well, such as the iPhone Motion X. I have a PDF already up for that. For the Android, there's a program called US Topo Maps. Again, I have a PDF for that. I both wrote these a couple years ago. They're pretty basic. These are nice little programs. Motion X is $2. This other one is $12 and allows you to have quite a few maps. I was looking at Gaia in the last few days. This works on both iPhones and Android phones. I'm going to be doing a demo with it, video with it, shortly, because it does work on both types of smartphones. They have a free version of this, which does everything that you're going to need for this challenge, and it's actually a good thing to actually use out on the trail. I'm a little hesitant to use smartphones on the trail because they're fairly fragile, but I think for the coronavirus distance challenge, they'll be great. I'm also not going to go into how to make GPS maps using GPS data. I will be doing YouTube videos of that in the future, and if you have questions about that, you're always free to ask me questions. Continue with the mileage challenge. If you want to do it, you need to sign up with Sarah Rennie by emailing her at natrc@natrc.org, preferably before May 1st. The challenge, and if you wait until after that, that shouldn't be a problem, but other people have a head start on you. The challenge is going to run from May 1st through November 1st, 2020. And you can use one horse. You can use multiple horses, though additional horses require an additional fee. What do you need to be able to participate? Couple basics. You need $25 to sign up. You need to have a horse or a mule, something that you can ride. You're going to need a GPS or a smartphone with a GPS app. Worst comes to worst, you can borrow your friends and use their GPS. I'm going to show you a few basic skills here. GPS, really basic stuff. Ability. At the end of all this, at the end of a ride, you also need to know how to take a picture, do a screenshot on your smartphone, or if you use a handheld or a watch GPS, you handheld or a watch GPS, you need to be able to take a picture and know how to send it. Let's see, the GPS for this, let's see. The GPS for this challenge, a smartphone, as I said, is more than adequate. All you're doing is logging miles. You don't even need to show the track. Most of you are probably familiar with your local trails that you're going to be doing most of your training rides on. So you probably don't even really need a GPS other than to log the miles. And with your smartphone, it's kind of a good idea to keep it in your pocket while you're riding. It's not the thing that you want to drop while you're riding. That's stuff happens if you're on horseback. Also, if you are using your smartphone to do this, make sure it's fully charged, or you carry a little portable battery charger. You don't want to be logging these miles and not get credit for them because your phone dies a few miles out on the trail. I'm trying to get my web camera going again, so bear with me just a moment. Okay, you may have video of me back. I don't know if you really do or not. Let's see. For as far as taking a screenshot of your GPS, track, the mileage, that kind of thing, on an Android phone, the command is to press the power button and the volume button at the same time, and then you should hear your camera click. I have an LG 7, and you press the volume down button and the power button. It works just fine. I don't have an iPhone, but I looked it up online. It looks like, depending on your model, you either press the power button and the home button, or the power button and the volume up button at the same time, and that should take a picture of your screen. You can then go to the video, go to your picture app, photo app, click on it, and then share it via email, or share it via email. Handhelds also work just fine. I'm going to, I don't know how to switch to just showing me on camera other than sharing my screen. I'm assuming you can see the picture of me over here on the right, on the left of the screen. I'm gonna just pass on that, sorry. Sidetracking. Continuing, key things to do when you log your miles. If you're using a smartphone, the GPS is running all the time, so it's not a big deal. If you're using a handheld GPS or a smartwatch, a handheld GPS like this, I don't know if you can see it, or a smartwatch like this, on these, the GPSs are not running until you either turn them on or activate them. The new smartwatches like mine, it will run for 2 weeks by itself, but if I turn the GPS on, it's going to run for about the battery down in about 10 hours. So you need to make sure you turn it on. The problem here is when you turn it on, you need to let it warm up for about 5 minutes, because it's probably going to think it's wherever you had it last turned on is where it thinks it's going to be, and it can take up to about 5 minutes for it to figure out where it's at. I've often had this happen where I go to a ride in New Mexico, and and you turn it on, and for the first few minutes it still thinks it's back in Denver, and we're not giving you a couple hundred miles of credit for driving somewhere. You need to know how to zero your GPS at the start of the ride. For a smartphone app, it's really very easy. I'm going to start up Gaia right now. I thought I had it running. And so it's trying to figure out where my camera is. So you can kind of see my smartphone app here. You can kind of see the distances up on the top. To start the GPS track, all I do is hit the record button, and I've got it paused. Resume recording. So now it's off and running, and I can start the ride. What I need to remember and it will be logging time and distance and where I go. And so at the end of the ride, you want to make sure you stop it, either stop it or take a picture at the end of the ride. And this is probably the easiest thing to forget. When I go on a ride, I come back, the ride's finally over, I need to get off the horse, I need to detack the horse, I've got other things on my mind, and then I throw the horse in the saddle, the horse in the saddle and the trailer, and then I drive home. And then I get home and I realize I'm still logging all of this, and I have an extra 30 miles on the track. If this happens, go ahead and save it, and then ping me, and we can figure out how many miles you actually did go. But these are kind of the first things, main things to keep track of. Zero your GPS when you start the ride. As soon as you get back to the trailer or back to your barn, stop your GPS, take a snapshot, and then go ahead and email it. Email it to, backing up here, email it to NATRC milegechallenge@yahoo.com. If you've got a smartwatch or a handheld GPS, make sure you turn it off, otherwise you kind of burn through your battery. That's about all there is to the NATRC mileage challenge for getting miles. Go do your ride, log the distance, send it to Sarah, and just keep doing that through the year. Are there any questions about any of this? Okay, there are some resources that you may want to be aware of. If you're trying to do this mileage challenge, I have questions also. They finally came in. Okay. I will show the email again. That will be this NATRC mileage challenge at yahoo.com. And so that's the first couple questions. Personally, the GPSs I use, if I'm just going out for a quick ride around the house, it's I've used something called alltrails.com. It's okay. It's a little bit, it's not ideal, but it does a nice job, and it shows terrain. And in theory, I can share it with people with iPhones and Android phones, but it hasn't worked out real well. When I'm on a trail ride, I use Garmin eTrex 20 or 30. I'll get to this in a little bit, but these are a steal right now on Amazon. This one originally was about $300. The replacement for it is $300, but you can get it on Amazon right now for, I think, $138. They just came out with a new model, and that's why. I will make a caveat. There's a reason you may want to buy the new version, and it has to do with maps. I just ordered a new one, the lower version of this, but I'll get to that in a little bit. You do not, you don't need to have Wi-Fi on your smartphone. You don't actually, if you're going out for a ride, particularly if you're going out in the country with your smartphone, when I go up into the mountains with my smartphone, one of the first things I do is I put it into airplane mode. Otherwise, my smartphone is constantly searching for a cell phone signal. And just the process of searching for a cell phone signal eats up a lot of battery. If you put it in airplane mode and you've pre-downloaded your base maps, you can go right all day on the, or I know some people have said on their iPhones, they've gone up to 3 days just running off the battery in airplane mode. And so save your battery. I really recommend that anyway, is when I'm mountain riding, I don't want people to call me. I'm not really sure how my horse will react when my phone rings on her back. She's a little bit jumpy, so I don't much care for that. Also, if something happens to me, I'll take it out of airplane mode and then I can make a telephone call if I need to, or call 911. The downside of that, I'm sidetracking here a lot. I'm sorry. I did go riding with a friend one year, last year when we were putting on the Bayou Gulch ride and we were pre-riding it, and her iPhone fell out of her pocket out on the trail somewhere. Fortunately, she was not in airplane mode, and we were able to get somebody else with an iPhone, and we were able to do the Find My Phone, and we were able to get back within about 25 to 30 feet of where she dropped her phone. And after a few minutes of searching, we found it in the grass. If you put it in airplane mode, it's just going to know where you put it in airplane mode, and your phone will be somewhere out on the trail for somebody else to find. Oh, I am sorry about that. Okay, email in the way. Let's see, other people posted the email address for the NATRC Challenge online. Somebody does agree that Easy Trail app is awesome and easy. I don't know that one. There are a lot of good ones, but it's MotionX, I know works very well on the iPhones, and it's only $2. It's cheap. It does all sorts of good things. US Topomap for the Android is good. I've used that one. And Gaia, I'm looking at it, and I know all sorts of people who rave about it. And all these are under $12. The Gaia app, there's a free version. If you want satellite imagery, you have to pay an annual fee of $20 a year. It's because they have to pay to source that information from other people. So they have a cost associated with that afterwards, and they want to make a few bucks. If there are no other questions, I'm going to continue on. I'm sorry, I kind of rambled there. Other resources, that's where we were. Most of us have our own trails that we go out and ride. But through this season, you may want to go out and try other things. This app called All Trails and Gaia. These apps have been out there for quite a long time, and they've done a lot of crowdsourcing. And so people they go out and do a trail, and they post it to the application, and you can share what other people have already done. This can be for hiking and biking and mountain biking and horseback riding and everything else. And so you're going to have to be a little bit pick and choose what sounds reasonable, but there are lots of sources out there for trails. If you happen to live in Colorado, they have an free app called Cotrex.app, and it shows, I think, almost literally every trail in the state, put together by the Colorado State Parks Department. They've done a really nice job. I suspect other states have done this too. You may want to go to your state Parks and Wildlife Department and see if they've posted anything like that. I know in New Mexico, the city of Aztec, some of our people down there, they're giving tracks to the city of Aztec, who's posting it on their website. So there are various sources, and some of these local sources are very good, like this source in Aztec, New Mexico. Not only do they put the trails, but I guess they have markers where all sorts of different arches are. that you can go out and ride to. Again, check with your county and state park websites. BLM and Forest Service websites have trails too, though these are usually maps as opposed to downloadable GPS tracks. If there are no more questions, I'm going to move on. Looks like Sarah cleared things out, and I am going to move on. This is getting into my normal GPS talk. I'll start with why I think having a GPS is important. When I'm out trail riding, these trails are already marked, and most of the ride managers and trail managers do a very good job of marking them. At the same time, it's easy to get out there. It's easy to miss a turn, and you're still on ribbons, and it's like, did I miss a turn? And did I take a left when I should have taken a right? That kind of thing. It's really nice to be able to look down at your GPS and say, am I on the trail? It's when I've done open, sometimes they're pretty Spartan about where they put the ribbons, and I've gone as much as half a mile or a mile and not seen a ribbon. And I was able to look down at my GPS and say, I'm still on trail. Gave me confidence to continue on down on the trail rather than say, maybe I should turn around and go find the last ribbon. Knowing that you're on trail, you avoid a lot of lost time, you avoid riding a lot of extra miles, and it can remove a lot of stress. Other good thing about GPSs, this is something that comes with riding with NATRC for a long time. You'd learn this anyway, but if you're new to NATRC, it's like, how fast am I going? They say they've paced this section at 4 or 5 miles an hour. You may not really know what 4 or 5 miles an hour feels like on your horse, but if you have a GPS, you'll have a speed indicator on it, and you can say, oh, I'm going 3.5, 4 miles an hour. Maybe I need to pick up the pace a little bit, or maybe I need to slow down a little bit. And you can kind of learn, using the GPS, you can learn what the different paces are that your horse is moving out at. It's also, people get distracted, and it's easy to lose track of where you are. Having the GPS to look at kind of recenters yourself. People make wrong turns, and it's after you've been riding down a trail and you start looking around and I haven't seen any ribbons for a while, and I don't see any ribbons now. It's nice to be able to look at your GPS and say, the turn was 100 yards back, or even worst case, the turn is 1.5 miles back. And one means you just can turn around and make a leisurely turn back, and the other is we need to be doing some cantering and making up some serious lost time to get back to where we're supposed to be. Also, what happens, and I've had this happen, is trail markings aren't always what they should be. It's not necessarily because ride management didn't put out enough trail ribbons, but I've seen the cases where animals eat them, the wind knocks them down. I've also had cases where people have pulled down several miles of ribbon during the middle of an event. And it's nice to have the GPS as a backup. I was a trail master one year, and I'd done one section of social trail, which is barely there, and I was able to use a GPS, rewalk it, and re-ribbon about 3 miles of trail while the ride was going on, but still be able to do it before the first rider came along. Also, if you have to abandon a ride for any reason during the middle of the ride, the GPS may help you find a shorter way back to camp, or it may help you find a way out to another place that you can be rescued. GPSs, what do they do? I think I wrote this slide probably 10 years ago, and a lot of people weren't that familiar with GPSs. We all know what they basically do is they kind of triangulate your position based on a bunch of different satellites up there. They show you where you're at. They help guide you where you want to go. And if you're, depending on how you use them, if you're recording a track, you can also see where you've been. They'll leave a trail on the screen of where you've been. Also, if you do get hurt, they can be very nice. And then when you call 911, you can say, these are my GPS coordinates, and search and rescue will love you because they know exactly where to go. There used to be concerns about whether the GPS can track you, a certain amount of paranoia I always felt. But GPSs, the handheld devices, the smartwatches, won't say the smartwatches, the handheld GPSs, these are generally one-way devices. They just receive a signal, they can't be used to track you. Now, from a more practical point of view, is some people actually want to be tracked or want to be able to have their GPS locate them. There are devices called Spot, and these talk to satellites, and it's basically these are for people who are going out in the wilderness, and particularly if you're alone and if something goes wrong, you can hit a panic button, and when you press that panic button, that will notify local search and rescue that somebody's in trouble, and it'll send coordinates and they can figure out how to get out to you. The newer version of the Spot also allow you to text people, say you can, even if you're in a remote location without cell service, you can text people, say, everything's good, just running behind, don't worry. Or you can send a text that says, I broke my leg, everything's good, I just can't move, but please send somebody out here for me. They can also be used to track you through time. So even if you're riding and you fall off your horse and you bang your head and you're unconscious, they can be used to figure out approximately where you were when you stopped moving. So if after 4 hours your friend is watching you and you haven't moved, that might be a good indicator that they need to go out and look for you. Smartphones also have tracking software. These are much more dependent on cell phone signals. In Colorado, they're not great. You get up in the mountains, you just don't have the service. Out east in the plains, they may work quite a bit better. One big problem with these is they are battery hogs. I have one on my smartphone called Glimpse, where you can give permission to people to track you for up to 12 hours. When they say, when you put that 12 hours in, even the app says, make sure you're hooked up to another power supply, because it is going to probably crash it's going to eat your battery up. How accurate are they? They're accurate enough for what we need to do. We don't have professional units, and you don't need them. Those are accurate down to the millimeter scale. The handheld, I'm not going to wave GPSs at you because my camera feed is stuck again. The handheld units that most of us carry now, your smartphones, these are good to about 10 feet, locating you within about 10 feet. So it's like if you have your smartphone and you're using satellite imagery or a more expensive handheld GPS with satellite imagery, you can be walking up to a gate or a tree, and you can look at your GPS and say, that tree right over there is that tree on my smartphone. They're very good. This is typically under ideal conditions, but even the new ones, they're good even in less than ideal conditions. My first GPS, it was an old Garmin, and I went into a slot canyon. You go into a slot canyon or even tall trees, it had no idea where you were. It kind of it said your last location was where you went into the slot canyon. Now they're much better and much less of a problem. A question that always comes up is, now that I have a GPS, can I leave my map at home? If you're doing a competitive trail ride, the answer is definitely no. Even if you're just going out into a new area that you haven't been before, I'd say definitely no. You shouldn't be depending on your GPS. I've always a little bit suspicious of electronics. Things happen, batteries die, electronics fail, misbehave, you drop the things and break them. Even in worst cases, I've seen where the military in Nevada, they were doing exercises and they were jamming all GPS signals there for several days. Things like that happen. This next one isn't so bad anymore. GPSs can mislead you. Some of my older GPSs, it would look like they were tracking fine. When I got home though, somehow they got confused and they jumped to be, they were tracking very nicely. They were just a mile from where they were supposed to be. Just things to watch out for. These GPSs, if you're using base maps, they're also only as good as the supporting data. We've all heard about the stories of people using Google Maps and Apple Maps and leading them off into the ocean and things like that. When you get back into the country, in the back country, or you get away from pavement, these maps, they start becoming pretty questionable, so don't trust the roads on them. The satellite imagery, if you're looking for trees and seeing there is a road there, that's pretty reliable, but they're only as good as the supporting data. Again, I'll make a comment that GPSs will lie to you sometimes, and this kind of goes back to if you don't turn them on right away and you start your GPS and you head out on the trail, and because I live in Denver and I go out for a ride, but the last time I turned on the GPS was in New Mexico, in the first few minutes, it may say that I've gone 300 miles. And if distance is important to me, when I'm out on this trail, like during a competitive ride, tacking on an extra 300 or so miles onto my ride that day really is going to be unhelpful. I've also had issues where my wife's GPS, I don't know if it's low batteries or the GPS was getting flaky. The signal was just bouncing around while the rest of us rode about 15 miles. She rode 180 miles that day. Literally, that's what the GPS was telling us, and we had initialized it firsthand. So they do weird things. Don't put your life in their hands. And when they start to tell you something that just doesn't seem right, start thinking about it, use your head. If you've got an additional map, go ahead. If you have an additional map, look at that, make sure they're telling you the same thing. Types of GPSs. There's some basic navigation GPSs. You can get these for less than $100. I really don't recommend these, particularly if you're going to be using them for competitive trail riding. These will only log distance and speed. They don't have any mapping capability. They're fine for the distance challenge, and they're good for, and even at a regular ride, they're good for acting as a stopwatch and for pacing. But for just a little bit more, you can actually now have get things with mapping capability, and somebody can give you a track you can put on your watch, on your smartphone, in your handheld, that you can use to say, am I on trail? Wristwatches. I just last year bought a Garmin Instinct and you can get these for about $180 now. If you really want to, you can spend up about $2,500 on these things. What I don't like about them is once the GPS is running, you've got a limited battery life. They're good for, mine's good for about 8-10 hours. So if I'm on a multi-day ride, I'm going to have to recharge it, make sure I've got a battery pack to charge it overnight. Also, the maps are tiny, even if they even support maps. But the nice thing is they're attached to you. They go wherever you go. Mainly, I've been using a mapping handheld, Garmin NATRC of various flavors. Some other people use some other wrist GPSs which have maps on them. I like these. They have a little bit bigger screen. I prefer them over smartphones because I can tie these to my saddle so I can just look down while I'm riding and see and look at the map and look at my time and distance. They're durable, they're weatherproof. I'm not worried about breaking them. I can use a couple cheap Duracell AA batteries and get about 4 weekends of riding out of them. I've been very, very happy with them. Also right now on Amazon, as I mentioned, you can get the Garmin eTrex 20X for I think $125. It originally listed at $200. The 30X you can get for $138, and it listed for $300. They have some new versions out now, and I think the new versions come with all the base maps. And they used to charge $100 for the base maps per region of the country, and that all seems to be included now. So I just got a new, what they call Garmin eTrex 22X, which should arrive in the mail in about a week from now. It was worth the extra $80 to get the maps, or that's my theory at this point anyway. But if you just want a mapping GPS, and you already have maps, or if you live in Colorado, New Mexico, and I can give you maps, which I made years ago for free, I'm happy to give them to you. But there's some really good deals on handheld GPSs right now. I'm reading a message. Somebody asked if, for my nearby trails, if you create a track, a GPX file, if I would be willing to put it up on my Nearby Trails website. Absolutely, yes. Nearbytrails.com is my personal website. I put it together. It's kind of a work in progress. It's my playground for programming, so it's not quite professional grade. But you can create an account, and I can either talk you through it, or you can send me the track. And with a little information, I can get these up so we can share them for people. Nearby Trails, I'm going to completely divert for the moment, and I apologize. And I found that I've apparently broken one thing recently, but you can go to Trails, and you can either type in your city or your town, or I can type in a zip code here. This happens to be my zip code, and I can say, show me the trails within 25 miles. And I can say either NATRC only or all trails these are all trails I've put in, and I can say search, and it will give me a list of all the trails within 25 miles of where I'm at. Again, this is my stuff, so they're mainly trails around Denver and Northwest New Mexico and Durango and that place. And so then I can say show selected, and it will show me the trails. I can pick a trail, and in theory I can download that, but I just found that this is broken, so I've got something I have to fix tonight. For those of you who in other regions who would like to share tracks with other people, this is a way we can do that, and I'd happy to share that with anybody in NATRC, and anybody can sign up and we can do that. Sorry for the total diversion, but this is all free. It's my work, so it's rambling again. Smartphones. Again, smartphones have come a long way. My hesitation with smartphones is just that they're expensive, they're fragile. They used to not be particularly weather resistant. Now they say they are, but I don't know that I really believe that. The downside, and you've already paid for them, you already carry them, and the apps with really good GPS applications are free to $20 a year. And because of the big screens, they're much easier to use and read than the handhelds or the watches. I just still kind of prefer the handhelds and watches from a durability point of view. Things that are good for NATRC. I've kind of gone through these already. The mapping handhelds and the wrists, kind of the pricing. Why I like them is they're durable, they're weatherproof, they can bounce around on your horse and you can drop them, and they're going to survive. They have reasonably good battery life. They've got off-road navigation tools. They've got a reasonably accurate compass. I will make a comment on the handheld GPSs. One of the selling features for the handhelds is they have this electronic compass. I haven't found those to be great. You're always having to recalibrate your GPS, which basically means spinning it around and rotating it and spinning it, and to get it to be decently calibrated. And you have to do that pretty often. It's probably on a daily basis. Even with the ones that don't have that, they still have a compass on them, and all you have to do is kind of keep them in the same orientation, walk about 20 feet without changing the orientation, and based off GPS signals, they can say, oh, map is off to your north, is off to your right, or whatever. So don't spend a lot of extra just because you want to have an electronic compass. They're not worth it. The cons, the screen size is kind of small. They can be difficult to read in bright sunlight. It's also an extra piece of equipment you have to haul around, and they can be anywhere from, as I said, about $125, which is a very good GPS for what we use, and you can easily spend $500 or $600 if you really want to. Honestly, I really don't know what those more expensive GPSs give you other than some satellite imagery, but and maybe a bigger screen, but it's anyway. Downsides, until recently, maps were extra, and they could be a lot extra. I had made maps early on, and I was giving those away to people, but I don't think we may not have to be doing that anymore. Satellite imagery is available, but that usually requires an annual subscription, and that is usually in the range of like $30 a year. Smartphones, again, you've got them. The software is cheap. They're pretty accurate. They've got satellite imagery. Many of the apps support offline, off cellular maps. The compasses, I think, are kind of dicey. Every smartphone I've had, and I've tried to get them calibrated, and I've tried using their compasses, and sometimes they point at north, and sometimes they point 90 degrees away from north, or everywhere in between. I've had completely mixed results with the compasses on my smartphones, and it's even when I calibrate them, they aren't particularly well calibrated. They're pretty easy to share GPS tracks. You usually have to email them to one another, and you may need to have access to a website. So you may not be able to share them at a ride, but before a ride, before a competition, if the ride manager, trail master, can get the GPS tracks out to you, you can get them onto your phone before you get there. With the handhelds, if you have somebody like me, I can load tracks there, but with the smartphones, it doesn't really work well at the site. The downside, again, durability and battery life has always been my downsides to that. If you do carry one and know other people do this, it's not a bad idea to carry a little bit extra battery pack in with you. GPSs, what do they do? What are the big things that we like to use them for? At an NATRC ride, time, distance, and speed. Those are three of the big things I'm interested in while I'm riding. That's what I'm looking at 95% of the time. Location, I've got a pretty good feel for where I'm at, and I'm good at reading a map, and I usually mainly use the map just to kind of confirm what I think I already know, or if I am a little bit confused, or if I know a trail is supposed to be coming up and I just want to get a feel for how far away it is, or have I just missed it. Obviously, they were built with navigation in mind. They all have compasses built in them. The GPSs I recommend are all going to have a map. They have something called routes. We're not going to get into those because they used to be useful, but they're not so useful anymore. Tracks, this is kind of the bread and butter for making sure that you stay on trail. Waypoints, you can just think of these as timing points. Navigation, in NATRC, we don't do anything with compass and bearing, so I'm going to ignore that. Waypoints, I said, are points of interest. I'm going to skip over this page. Waypoints, I just said what they were. They're your timing locations. Tracks, these are the breadcrumbs. This is basically a line showing where the trail is. You can use your GPS, you can look down on it, you can say I'm on trail or I'm not on trail. The downside of tracks is they don't tell you whether you should be going one way down the trail or the other way down the trail. The other thing they don't tell you is if you are on the right part of the trail for today. We had a ride a couple years ago where people had GPSs, they were following their GPS track, they had a map, they came to an intersection, the map said go left, and they instead went right, and they continued for 2 or 3 miles down the hill and looking at their GPS saying, we're on trail, and they were on trail, they were just on the trail at the wrong time. That they were supposed to be there at the end of the day and not the beginning of the day. So things to watch out for, and you can't put full faith in your GPS. It will tell you a lot of what's very useful, but you also have to be able to interpret it and make sure it's telling you what you need to be asking the right questions. How can you use tracks? You can kind of use, I use a GPS tracks at 2 different levels. sometimes I'm really confused on where I am, and so I have a map, and here would be my map, and I can see the entire track for the day. If this is what my GPS looks like, and it says, and here's my location pointer, I know I'm on this part of the map. And so it's like, good, that may either be good or bad, but it tells me that I'm on this part of the map, and I can figure out what to do from there. The other way, this is, I'm zoomed way out so I can see, kind of get the big picture of what things are going on. I can also zoom way into the GPS track, and you can see that I'm very close to this line, and this blue line here is where I am currently been walking. They don't have to line up perfectly, just because GPSs are, the person who made the map and your GPS have accuracies of 10, 20 feet. And so you may not be exactly on line, but usually you'll be able to see the trail or that you're supposed to be on, and you can say, this is close enough. But when you are zoomed way in, you can just kind of follow things around, and you can follow going around the turn. If this is where the trail is, you can say, yeah, I'm basically on trail. On the other hand, if you are continuing down the trail and you look at your GPS and this is what you see, you can say, oh, I have missed a turn. And you can either look at the scale and you can say, oh, I've just missed it by a little bit and I can go back. Or if you look at this screen here and there's no red line on the screen, you can say, that's not good, I'm way off trail. And then you may want to zoom back out into more of a picture like this to see how far away am I from the track and how far do I have to go trotting back to get back on trail. Using the GPS at a NATRC ride. First thing you want to do is make sure you turn it on at least 5 minutes before you time out at the beginning of the day. If it's a smartphone, this isn't an issue, but if it's a smartwatch, if it's your GPS watch, or if it's a handheld GPS, you want to give it 5 minutes to figure out where it's located. I'll go through timing out. At the timing out, basically the big things you want to do there is set the time to 0 and set your time to 0, set your distance to 0. When you're out on trail, I spend 95% of my time looking at time, distance, and speed. As I've commented, occasionally location. It used to be real easy for me to do this when I passed out GPS tracks to people, is I could put proximity alerts on timing points. And so when you came within 250 feet of a timing point, it would beep at you. When you got to the timing point, it would beep at you again. And when you're 250 feet away from the timing point, it would beep at you a third time. That was really nice, is when it's beeping at you, if you're paying attention, you'd say, I'm at the turn and you know to turn here. The 3 beeps if you're not paying attention, if your thing is beeping at you 3 times and you still miss the turn, I'm not going to feel bad that as a trail master that you missed the turn. It's your responsibility at that point. It's your responsibility anyway, but at least I gave you fair warning. You can also use GPSs for on-trail analysis. It's if you know you're supposed to be going 4 miles an hour, that means in every 15 minutes you should be doing 1 mile. And if you are at one timing point, if you left one timing point 2 miles ago and you know your next timing point is 2 miles ahead of you, you're going 4 miles an hour, you should know, roughly that you have about 30 minutes till you get to your next timing point. And so you can look at your timing table and say, am I in time? Am I running behind? Am I running too fast? And you don't have to depend on just looking at the map. When at a timing point, in between timing points, you can use your GPS to help you figure out how well you're doing on timing and pace. You do have to pay attention to the mileage. No GPS is going to give you the same answer all the way down the trail. There are lots of reasons for it, and I won't get into, but they're going to disagree with the map. They're going to disagree with your riding partner. But the errors usually creep in through the day. They're usually not big errors. And the new GPSs are much better than they used to be. It used to be if you went under a big high power line, you might get 2 or 3 miles added to your GPS, but that doesn't happen so much anymore. But it's with kind of watching the miles and distance in your map, you can kind of get a pretty good feel of where you are at any point in time and how many minutes away you are from the next timing point. Again, screens I use 99% of the time. Time, distance, speed. I wear glasses, and so I like big numbers. Other people are quite happy with smaller numbers. And then occasionally use the map just to kind of see where I'm at. Said make sure you turn it on and warm it up. This timing out, just the basics are, make sure your GPS is ready to hit go when you get to the timer. You want everything is just ready to be zeroed when you get up to the timer, and you want this to be set up several minutes at least before you get to the timer. It's not the kind of thing you want to have to do when you get to the timer. Also, always have a fallback timer. I've had the batteries go out on me on the GPS. For whatever reason, I've had to restart them. Have a watch. Make sure it's, if you're open and you know you timed out at 7:30, just remember that you timed out 2 minutes after, or 4 riders after the first rider who went out at 7:30, so you're 2 minutes behind that. If you're novice, if you're a CP rider, just kind of know what your start time is, and then you can kind of do the math in your head if you have to say how far. We can talk about that at another time, but if you have questions on how to do that, it's pretty, it's not too hard to make sure that you stay within your time window if you know when you timed out, or roughly when you timed out. I'm going to ignore that. Talked about time, distance, speed. I just went to the end of my slideshow. I've alluded to these different things about zooming in, zooming out. Okay, how do I get tracks? This all depends on this is basically dependent on the trail master for the ride. If you're in region 3, I'm kind of usually the person to go to, or I've usually coordinated. I've been to all the rides, and so I have tracks that I've collected through time, or I'll get a hold of the trail master, and I'll usually bring them to the ride, and I bring a laptop. I think we're all getting better with tracks, and we can start posting tracks online. Ride managers can do this as well, and posting them on nearby trails or some other site we agree to, so that riders can download them in advance. Now that we have smartphone apps like Gaia and things like that, if ride managers can get organized, and they're getting better at this, they can be emailed out the week before the ride, and so you can come prepared and have them already on your phone. I've got, again, I'm going to have videos on how to get the tracks onto your phone, or how to save them and upload them to a place where people can share them. So I think this will become much easier through time. Smartphone apps, I'm going to skip that. Okay, so we're getting close to the end. Different iPhone and Android apps. I've mentioned this one a few times. Gaia, you can get it free. The free version is nice. It just the basic difference between the free version and the paid versions is the free version just uses a topo map background, and for $20 a year you can get satellite imagery and a few other features. And for $40 a year, if you're concerned about property access and whether you're on forest land or BLM land or private land, you may want to, like if you're a hunter, it may be worth spending the extra money. I found it very easy to use. I'm going to make a little tutorial on that here, hopefully over the weekend. You can show time, distance, speed. It's pretty easy to share tracks. You can save a track and you can share it, and by sharing it you can email it to somebody or email it to yourself. And to get it onto, if you have a GPX track and you want to get it on your phone, you can upload it to your website, upload it to the Gaia.com website with a free account, and then you basically sync it off their website to your GPS. And that actually worked pretty easily after a couple tries. Motion X for $2. I know a number of people have been using this. It's a nice phone. It goes back to the iPhone 4 days. You can, this is the easiest one to share that I've seen. You can share it on, I think you can share it on Facebook, but with this app, you email your GPX track to your account on Motion X, and then when you turn on your phone, it automatically downloads to your phone. So I personally think this is the slickest one for getting tracks onto your phone. When I first started looking at iPhone apps, Gaia wasn't free. It was still $20 a year, or they had a free version, but it was pretty disabled. And US Topo Maps Pro is $12 and has a bunch of features I like. Again, this was one you have to kind of email yourself. And I found that you could email it to, if you can read your email on your phone, you can get the GPX track onto your, into the app. So this one worked very well as well. I've kind of spent my whole hour. I didn't mean to do that. I hope that you guys are all still here. And does anybody have any questions? And hopefully you guys are all still there and I didn't lose everybody half an hour ago. This is really weird. I'm just talking to my computer screen and with no feedback at all. All right, I'm not seeing a couple comments. I hope this was useful to people. If you have questions, please feel free to email me. My email address is wwingle@uncert.com, or you can go wwingle@nearbytrails.com. That one might be easier to remember because that's my website. I have a Facebook where I post pictures too, so you can personal message me there as well. How do we get a trail from the CTR to our how do we get the trail from the CTR to our GPS? I'm assuming that by the I'm assuming that there you'll have a trail master who has created a GPS track and you want to get it onto your GPS. How you would do that is you're going to have to get the trail master to, option one is for them to email it to you, and then I will have some videos on how to get it onto your smartphone, onto your handheld from that point. It's can be a little bit tricky. If it's like a Garmin, and if you're in region 3, I'll usually plug in a USB cable. I'll have the GPS tracks either been mailed to me or I created them myself, and then people will show up my trailer and I'll upload them. That's fairly painless, but you have to have somebody who's tech savvy enough to do that and has brought their laptop. Once we get these videos, I think it'll be easier for me. I'll go through the step-by-step process of everybody being able to do that themselves, assuming that they've been emailed to them. So I'm going to leave that question there. Todd bought a GPS Garmin 66i. I wanted to learn how to use it. Is this one that I'm going to be doing for YouTube? I'm not familiar with the 66i. Most of the Garmins are really pretty similar to each other. I've kind of had the basic model, but I've started with the basic model and it worked just fine for me. But I think if you watch my video, I currently have videos online for the Garmin NATRC series. And if you go to this website, and probably this one here for loading and displaying, this may work just fine work just fine for you, maybe close enough. Various people will bring various Garmin GPSs to me in the trailer at a ride, and they all pretty much load the same way. Personally, I use an Anchor battery. Let's see, I was actually just looking at this. I wonder if I still have the link up. I would go, it's, let me just bring up Smile. This is kind of nice with a battery. So search for battery pack. I happen to have an Anchor. They come in various sizes from, you can get a small one with its 10,000 milliamps for 20 bucks. I think mine is a 30,000 amp one. And this is a 30,000 amp one is enough to charge both my wife's and my smartphones over a 4-day weekend and recharge them probably each phone probably 2 or 3 times. So depending on how many people you're traveling with, and that's without recharging the battery at all. And that has worked out very well for us. Have I tried Avenza? I know nothing about Avenza. I don't know what it is. Have you seen Avenza? I'll just say I haven't used it. I don't know what it is. Have you seen that ride managers are tending to move away from using as many ribbons now that more and more riders are using GPSs? No, I have not. My dream has been to put on a ride that's GPS only and without any ribbons at all. The reality is that isn't going to happen, particularly if you have new riders. And even still at Air Force last year with the LED riders, we had some social trails that they were out on. And when I was ribboning it, my rule was at any point on the trail, you should be able to see a minimum of 2 ribbons. And I think people are just still enough tech shy that we still need to ribbon. I think we can ribbon less. And I will say that at other rides, I ribbon in between less, and I mainly ribbon intersections, and I put up big signs and to make sure with arrows saying go this way, go that way, anywhere you can make a turn. But that's kind of a whole different topic. But usually probably 25% of the people are riding with GPSs now, I would guess. And so people know who have the GPSs and know who knows how to use them. And so when things get a little bit tricky, they will kind of glom onto those people. So ribboning, I think, is becoming less critical for the seasoned riders. But when you have new riders coming in and who don't know how we do things and aren't used to using GPSs, we still need a ribbon for them. What do we need to have so people can have the info to load the trails? Again, getting the tracks is dependent on the trail master, and the trail master has to, just about every trail master now is GPSing their trails, and they are making their tracks. How easily it's some trail managers are better at taking that data and making it into a usable format for other people to use than others. But I think we're working on that, and I'm trying to get some tools to make that easier for trail masters as well. That, again, a bit of a side issue. It's kind of a whole nother topic, but we're working on that. What form of coordinates do you use, lat long, or I prefer decimal degrees. I'm a geologist and I do mapping, and it's a lot easier to work in decimal degrees rather than degrees, minutes, seconds. Just my preference. They both work, but I prefer decimal degrees. You say there are glitches, so why should we want to ride that? That would depend. If GPSs fail, why would we want to do a ride that's entirely dependent on them? Well, usually I would be more, it's a lot of rides. The trails are still fairly detailed. The GPSs have come a long way, and they're not as glitchy as they used to be. At the same time, they do fail and batteries fail, and it would be a real drag to be out in the middle of a 20-mile ride or a 30-mile ride and have your GPS conk out on you. From a trail rat master point of view and a ride manager point of view, not having to ribbon would be really nice, but I don't think it's particularly realistic. I also, as a rider, I think being able, as a rider, being able to go out and do a ride that you have never done before and successfully do it is kind of exciting. I went up as I was helping ribbon one ride for another ride manager one year, and I had never ridden in the area. I had no idea what the trails were like. I had no idea where the trails were. I didn't know if I was going to be on a single track or roads. And I showed up at the trailhead, and he said, he told me he was going to give me a GPS track. So I brought my laptop. He gave me the tracks. We loaded them on my GPS, and I went out and I ribboned 12 miles of trail for the ride the coming weekend, and I'd never seen the trail before. So it was kind of exciting that with a GPS, I could go somewhere I'd never been before and know where I was going and successfully help the guy put together a ride. Any other questions? I hope this was useful to people. I'm going to get a hold of Sarah, and we are going to figure out how to post this video, I am assuming, on YouTube, and my PowerPoint presentation. I will work with her on that, and we'll either get this, see if we can get this on the national website somehow, and failing that, and even if we do that, I will put it up on my personal website, and it will be under this blog area here, nearbytrails.com/WordPress. And you can, over here is just kind of the menu of my different things. And you'll just be able to see webinar with today's date. It'll be here. Can you email your presentation? If you email me a request for it to this email address, I'll be happy to send you the PowerPoint. Okay, anything else? I usually like to go for a walk after I do this and have people do this in hand, because people are kind of gun shy to do that. But when you actually go out on a walk and you follow a track for 15 minutes, all of a sudden you really start to realize this is really easy. My plan over the weekend, I was hoping to get it done this week. As I was still trying to figure out the technology of recording video of your smartphone, and I'm going to use my wife's smartphone and her camera and my GPS, and I'm going to walk around and just kind of follow a track on a GPS and say, we're coming up to a turn, and then you can see the turn, and we can choose which direction to go, and you'll see that we're just following a line on a GPS, and you'll be able to visually see where we're going, and you'll be able to see that, yeah, these things really do work. We all know that they work. We drive with them, and they work. It's just kind of amazing to see it, that when there's no road around and you got a little something in your hand, that they actually can work just as well as the GPSs in your car. Any other questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions. I've seen a few people are dropping off. I'm assuming that people are done. and I'm going to go ahead and stop this webinar.